Today we're looking at Romanesque architecture, this really powerful, heavy style that you see all over Europe from around the late 10th to the 12th century.
It's a huge deal. I mean, this was the first architectural style to really spread across the whole continent after the Roman Empire collapsed centuries earlier.
Right. So where did they get the ideas from?
They were looking around at old Roman ruins, those massive arches and stone buildings, and they were thinking, how can we use this for our world? A world that was getting, well, a lot more organized.
Organized around the church, mostly.
Exactly. You have this explosion in the number of monks, and more people are going on these long journeys called pilgrimages.
So they needed buildings that were huge, strong, and really importantly, fireproof.
Absolutely. The architecture was meant to show the power of the church. And it's no surprise that you find a lot of these super sturdy churches right along those main pilgrimage routes. They were like rest stops for travelers.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. The first thing you notice with a Romanesque church is just the walls. They look like fortresses.
And that's not just for looks. It's pure engineering. Those walls had to be incredibly thick. We're talking sometimes 8, maybe 12 feet deep.
12 feet? Why so thick?
Because they had to hold up these incredibly heavy stone ceilings and roofs. The walls were doing all the work.
And if you're inside, that means one thing. It's dark. You've got these massive walls, so you can only have a few very small windows. The whole feeling inside is somber, kind of mysterious.
And the way they built them was pretty clever. I mean, building a 12-foot wall of solid, perfectly cut stone would have been way too expensive.
So they took a shortcut.
A smart one, they'd build 2 thin outer layers of nice stone and then just fill the huge gap in between with, rubble, broken rocks, and wet mortar.
So it's like a stone sandwich with a concrete filling.
Basically, yeah. It gave them the fortress-like strength they needed, but for a fraction of the cost.
Okay.
And it had another benefit. It kept the inside cool. In places like Spain or southern France, that was a huge plus in the summer.
Okay, so you have the walls, but you also need something to hold up the roof from the inside, vertical supports.
Right. And here we're talking about piers and columns. But the Romanesque style really loved the pier.
What's the difference? A pier isn't just a round column, is it?
No, a pier is usually a big, chunky square or rectangle of solid stone. And the important thing is it can handle way more weight, and especially more of that outward push, than a simple column can.
So they had to be built wide.
Super wide. And they had to sit on these really deep foundations of stone and gravel so they wouldn't sink or buckle. This is all done without modern tools, just knowledge passed down for generations.
But they did add some decoration, right? They weren't just plain blocks.
Oh, for sure. Sometimes they had attached smaller decorative columns to the face of a pier just to make it look a little less bulky.
And what about the top part?
Every pier or column was topped with a carved stone block called a capital. And these could get really elaborate, covered in patterns, or even telling Bible stories in stone.
So we have strong walls and these massive piers. But the real star of the show, the thing that gives the style its name, is the arch.
This is the key piece of tech they borrowed from the Romans, the round arch.
And the genius of it is how it handles weight, right?
Exactly. Instead of a flat beam, which would just crack, the arch takes all the weight from above and channels it down and outward into those heavy piers on the sides.
Which lets you build much wider doorways and windows.
Way wider. And when you put a bunch of these arches in a row, you get what's called an arcade. It creates this really beautiful, calm, rhythmic feeling as you walk alongside it.
And the arch is held together by that one stone at the very top.
The keystone, yep. It's the piece that locks everything into place.
Okay, let's look up at the ceiling. Builders wanted to get away from wooden roofs because, well, they catch fire.
A huge problem in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So to make a fireproof ceiling, they turned to the vault, basically a stone ceiling.
And the first version was the barrel vault.
Which is pretty simple conceptually. Just imagine taking an arch and stretching it out like a long tunnel.
So it's strong and fireproof, but it sounds like there's a catch.
A big one. It's called lateral thrust. All that weight doesn't just push down, it pushes outward along the entire length of the walls.
Ah, so that's why the walls had to be so ridiculously thick.
Precisely. The walls are acting like giant bookends, just trying to keep the whole ceiling from splaying out and collapsing. And that really limited how wide you could make a building.
So you'd mostly just see barrel vaults over the main central aisle, the nave.
Right. But what happens when you need wider buildings for bigger crowds?
You need a better vault.
This is where the big innovation happens. The groin vault.
Okay, what's that?
It's what you get when you have 2 barrel vaults intersect at a right angle. If you look up, you see this X shape on the ceiling. Those lines where they meet are called the groins.
And what's the benefit of that?
It completely changes how the weight is distributed.
Yeah.
Instead of pushing out along the whole wall, the weight is now channeled down those 4 groins to 4 specific points.
To the corners where the piers are.
You got it. And that was a total game changer.
Because if the weight is only on the piers, the walls in between them
Don't have to be solid anymore, they're just filler. And architects realized they could start putting bigger windows in those sections. It was the first step toward letting more light in.
So this groin vault is really the thing that paves the way for the Gothic style later on, with its huge windows.
It's the essential stepping stone. But for now, Romanesque churches mostly stuck to a standard layout.
The basilica plan.
Yep, a long rectangular shape they also borrowed from the Romans. You walk in, and you're in the main central area, the nave.
And on either side, you have narrower walkways called aisles, separated by all those piers.
Then at the far end, you've got the apse. That's the semicircular part where the altar is.
Some of the bigger churches also added a section that crosses the main part, a transept.
Right, so from above, the whole church looks like a cross. And it was practical, too. It gave them extra space for more side altars, so multiple groups of pilgrims could have Mass at the same time.
Okay, let's go back to the windows for a second. We said they were small on the outside, like little slits.
Tiny. But they had a trick to get a bit more light out of them.
The flaring technique.
Exactly. Since the wall was so thick, they'd make the window opening narrow on the outside, but have it flare out, getting much wider as it went toward the inside.
Like a megaphone for light.
Perfect analogy. It would catch that small beam of light and just spread it out a little bit.
Which created a very specific mood. Quiet, sort of dim.
And very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
The windows were usually placed high up on the walls, so you get these beams of light hitting the upper parts of the church, while the floor where people stood was left in deep shadow.
Before glass was common, what did they use?
Sometimes they'd use thin sheets of translucent stone, like alabaster. It would glow, but you couldn't see through it.
Now, since the buildings themselves were so massive and plain, they put a lot of decorative effort into one specific place.
The portal.
Yeah.
The main entrance. This was often the most expensive and most detailed part of the whole church.
And it was basically a giant stone storybook for people who couldn't read.
It was the most important teaching tool they had. All the carvings told stories from the Bible.
The main focus is that semicircular area right above the door, the
tympanum.
The tympanum, right.
And that usually had a huge figure of Christ, something really awe-inspiring and maybe a little intimidating, to remind you that you were entering a sacred space.
It also feels like you're walking through a tunnel to get in.
That's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
They used rows of arches that get smaller as they go in, called archivolts. It creates a sense of depth, like you're literally passing through layers to enter the kingdom of heaven.
And they added details to the outside walls, too, to break up how massive they looked.
Yeah, a common one was the blind arcade. It looks like a normal arcade, a row of arches, but it's just attached to a solid wall, purely for decoration.
And up by the roof, you sometimes see those little carved blocks.
The corbel tables, little stone supports sticking out, and yeah, they'd often carve them into funny faces or animals. Little bit of medieval humor.
We can't forget the bell towers.
They were the skyscrapers of their day, often the tallest thing in town.
And they had a very practical job.
A few, actually.
Hmm.
The bells told everyone when to pray, when to work. But the towers were also great lookouts. You could spot an enemy army or, more likely, a fire in the town from up there.
One last thing I find fascinating is that Romanesque churches don't all look the same. A church in Germany looks really different from one in France.
And that's all about the building materials.
Yeah.
It was just too expensive to haul stone long distances, so you used what you had nearby.
So if you live near a volcano in Germany, you use dark volcanic rock?
And your church is dark gray. If you're in an area with a lot of limestone, like France, your church is a creamy beige color. It connects each building to its specific place, its specific history.
So really, Romanesque architecture is this amazing blend of old Roman engineering, the arch, the vault, and the very specific needs of the Middle Ages.
They wanted strength. They wanted fire protection. And they wanted a space that could reflect the power and organization of their faith.
And these buildings were made to last. They were built to survive just about anything, giving Europe this really solid architectural foundation that we can still see standing today.
It's true. They figured out how to control immense weight using just stone, mortar, and some brilliant geometry. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs aren't about lifting things up, but about figuring out where to put the weight down.
Good luck with your studies.